Hey there, it's Melissa Brunetti, and welcome to the Mind Your Own Karma podcast.
Hey there, Karma Crew. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Mind Your Own Karma, the Adoption Chronicles, where we navigate the complex and deeply personal world of adoption. In this episode, it's special. We've brought together voices from all corners of the adoption triad: adoptees, birth parents, and adoptive parents. They are here to share heartfelt messages of understanding, wisdom, and hope for those who may be struggling. Whether you're searching for connection, healing, or perspective, these voices carry insights that could be exactly what you need to hear today. Let's dive in.
I love this question that you asked your guests, and I would say investigate the many resources available. And we've talked about them. I've mentioned them, like reading memoirs and joining writing groups and retreats and conferences and listening to podcasts and certainly getting thoughts out of your head through the form of journaling. Investigate, that's the word I'm going to say. Investigate all of these. And most importantly, I wouldn't underestimate the power of one-on-one relationships with another adoptee.
Well, I would say that education and awareness, and if you haven't read The Primal Wound, or if you haven't read some of the other resources that are out there, I would definitely take advantage of those, because it starts with awareness. And when I got the awareness, I could then take ownership of what I was understanding. Without the awareness, I wouldn't have been able to take ownership, and I couldn't take action. So I think it starts with awareness, and then you can take ownership. And you have to take ownership of our part. The biggest challenge, I think, for adoptees is that we've been victimized in some manner. And so do we continue to take that story and become that and live that out, or do we take ownership and change the narrative? And so it's challenging those lies, those core lies that we believed about our worthiness and us being lovable, and challenging those and replacing them with the truth of what the Creator says we are. I would also say that the community is amazing. So if someone's adopted and they're not like getting into these communities that exist in the different social platforms, that's one of the best things they could do. You listen to 5 podcasts that adoptees tell their story, and you're gonna hear your story being told by other people. And so those resources that are available are amazing. So those are the things. Get plugged into the space where you can be seen and understood by people who get it.
Find a connection, find a way to express yourself, hold space for each other, because we're all in different spots. Some of our experiences have been really tragic, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Some of us have been in the middle of the ground. I'm probably middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have had a fantastic, I guess if you want to say, adoption experience. So there's not unlike anything else in the world, it's the same in this community. But most importantly, I do have 2 favorite things. I have a favorite quote that helps me with my adoptee identity, and it is the "Be yourself, everyone else is taken." Oscar Wilde. And I also have a mantra that I've been using quite a bit in the latter part of 2023 and the first part here of 2024. And that is to tell my adoptee brain to calm down and to live happily. Say it over and over. Calm down, brain. Live happily.
7 words. You are not alone. You have resources.
Yeah.
Those are 2 things I didn't have when I was growing up. So I think it's wonderful to have, podcasts like this and books and, adoptee-based therapies.
Yeah.
Go out, educate yourself. You're not alone. I'd really like us adoptees not to shoot inside the tent, especially on social media.
Yes.
Let's try to have a little bit of, understanding and empathy, even if your situation is a little bit different than somebody else's. We all have that one big thing in common, and let's try not to forget that.
Well, you're not alone. We're all struggling. It's hard. And like, you are worthy and you do belong. I think that's like super important. I wish that people had said that to me my whole life, right? It's like to figure that out at 40, you know? And that, it doesn't, your adoption is part of your identity, but it doesn't have to define your future. You know, you can have loving relationships, you can have money, you can have the job that you want, you can have whatever you want, and you don't have to let this be the thing that holds you back forever.
It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to dig deep within yourself. You're going to have to ask for help. You're going to have to get involved and get support. Every step of the way, get support, or it'll eat you alive.
If you are emotionally struggling, find somebody who can help you. You don't want to carry that baggage around with you. If you are just not satisfied with what you think you know, I would say get out there and persistently search with an open mind. And keep your mind open to what it is you ultimately find. And I guess be kind to others. And be kind to yourself. I hear a lot of adoptees talking, and they're hurt, but they're turning the hurt back around on themselves. So, nothing is your fault. So give yourself a break and take a deep breath and go and see what you find. But again, approach that with an open and a forgiving mind.
What would you like struggling first parents, especially first mothers, what would you like them to know?
That they're not alone, that this, the pain of relinquishment is shared pretty much by all of us, and that however you can do it, find a way to connect with other birth moms, because they will understand. You won't have to explain. That like the support groups that I'm a part of, there's nothing like being in a group and you say something and every head in the room nods and understands. Having that connection with other people that have been through this is vital to working through it and finding your way to the other side, and especially through reunion. I think so many of us on all sides of reunion, we struggle with it because it's complicated, and we're all feel so vulnerable. And that's hard, right? It's hard.
Oh, dear struggling adoptees. Just asking that question just really takes me to my heart, because I so know the pain of what it's like to struggle as an adoptee. I guess the first thing I want to say is that you're not alone. You're absolutely not alone. Reach out to other adoptees. There are Facebook groups, many Facebook groups that you can join with conversations with other adoptees. Get support. Look for an adoption competent therapist. If you go to Instagram and type in #adoption trauma or adoptee voices, you will find so many voices out there talking about adoption. And the other thing I would say is trust yourself. Trust yourself as much as you can. Come back to listening to your own inner voices. It is a confusing ride, and other people's voices can take you off course. So journal, listen to yourself, write things down, get support, and trust yourself. You're meant to be here. You belong here.
Number one is that you are loved and you belong. You are loved and you are belong today. Whether you see it and accept it or not, you are loved. You're loved by the greatest power in the universe, and that exists today.
Yeah.
Now, number two is it's okay to outlive a person's past. You know, one of the things that I have on my bathroom wall that I see every day is, this is the year that I've outlived my past. And that has happened for me, and that is real for me. And I'm so grateful for that. And the ability to outlive the effects of your family of origin, the effects that have come with not feeling like you belong, the effects of thinking that you don't fit in or don't know how to fit in, the thoughts that there's nothing special about you, are all things that it's possible to outlive.
Yeah.
And it's possible to see the positives that have come out of that. You know, we've been talking about superpowers for the last couple of minutes, and regardless of where you are, you have a superpower, and you have a purpose that only you can fulfill. You have a purpose in this world that is special and unique to you. And if you don't have it, if you don't show it, if you don't take it out in the world, nobody gets the benefit of it. And number three, we've talked about service as a part of our conversation. And for me, service is so important in that transformational journey. It helps me see my value to others. It helps me live out my values, right? I think people should be treated with justice. I think people should be treated fairly. I think people should be treated with loving kindness. And service allows me to live that out. And I think every adoptee would benefit from that service being a part of their story as well. The last thing I would say is include a partner. Whether it's another adoptee, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a SIB, whether it is a biological or adopted parent, don't walk the journey alone. You know, one of my favorite things that I've heard in life is that when I'm listening to my own thoughts, I'm taking advice from a crazy person.
Yeah.
And for me, it's important to have a partner on the journey. And those partners have increased in number, decreased in number, changed in intimacy, changed in relationship. But walking the journey with a partner has been absolutely crucial for me.
I would say that if you're struggling as an adoptee, and we're all individuals, just seek out different means. So there might be a support group that you might want to be a part of. There might be therapy that you need. There might be just even a fellow adoptee. Listening to the podcast, listening to your podcast, I'm a new listener, I'll admit. So as I'm listening, you know, finding that other people have that same story. Because if you feel isolated, if you feel alone, if you feel rejected, if you feel whatever those negative feelings are and those difficult feelings, sometimes the only solace that you can find is with someone that has or is walking that same path as you. And if you go to a support group and you find that that's not your place, that you don't feel it there, you're not getting what you need from there, then find something else. Or maybe you need 2 or 3 of those things. But don't be afraid to keep reaching out and seeking for some understanding, some comfort, because it's true that you just really, no one understands you as an adoptee fully understands you other than another adoptee.
that there is a world of people that do get you, that they're there, like, because knowing they're there means that, like, okay, now we can find them. I don't know until I stumbled upon the adoption community, as far as, you know, so many adoptees that had done the work and had come out of the fog and were speaking about things that my soul had felt my whole life and no one had voiced. Like, there is no sense of connection that's higher than that. But what came with that was, oh my goodness, you all exist. Like, I thought I was like an alien all by myself. Like, seriously. So struggling adoptees, like, just that there are people that get it, and it's worth your energy to make sure that you're doing what you can to connect to them or find them, because if they haven't already, because that, I think, makes a world of difference for all adoptees. Like, it may not take care of everything, but it's a huge thing to have that validation of knowing that they experience the adoption part of, like, that they're an adoptee. They get it.
Self-acceptance is a beautiful gift to give yourself. That self-love is possible. That self-permission is essential along this journey. And that, as you have said, layer by layer by layer, if you're willing to do the work, you can begin to feel lighter and not so burdened. And that you can liberate yourself into the next chapter of your life, the next version of who you're here to be, a greater version than you are today. And that you can do so and celebrate your worth each and every day. And at the very end of the day, as I have on the Post-it note, you are welcome into this life. But it starts with that invitation to yourself, to welcome yourself into the life that you've been given, to do the work of understanding the nuances of your relationship with yourself right now, how that may be showing up in your life, if that's serving your higher good or not, and if it's not, what do you need to do to move beyond a limiting belief, to move beyond a pain point that's holding you back? I believe in you. You can do it. You can do it.
Yeah.
You and I know this. And it is absolutely essential to share that message with each and every adoptee. Your value cannot be measured. You are a brilliant light in this world. And what I want to see your light from where I'm standing.
Yeah.
And we can start that right here, right now, today, through this conversation. And I hope that if you feel that spark, you recognize that that is a sign to take the leap, the step out, to open the door today, right here, right now. Do not wait another second.
For the first time in my life, I've learned that there are these amazing organizations out there that support adoptees, which I wasn't even aware of before I started writing this book, and I wish I had known. But there are so many resources now for adoptees, and also amazing organizations that specifically support transracial adoptees, transnational adoptees. And I think people just need to reach out and connect with those resources that will be a safe space to sort of carry them as they do this really hard work of kind of figuring out their identity, right?
Yeah.
It's an identity journey as an adoptee, but now there are these amazing organizations that are so aware, because they're largely run by adoptees, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's just amazing resources out there.
Yeah.
So I would say reach out, because you're not alone, and they're wonderful people who can carry you through your work and your your journey.
Yeah.
We can learn to make these things become more of an ally than an adversary. We can learn to use a sense of loss and disconnection into something else than what it seems to be on the surface of that. Again, I wouldn't have said that 10 years ago. I'm saying that now, but I'm much older and I've got a lot of experience that helps inform me about that. People who have a strong internal dialogue system are much more resilient in life and are not far less prone for disease and illness. It only stands to reason on one hand, but what does that mean? Internal dialogue. Writing a journal, talking with somebody, sitting by yourself, by the side of a pond, thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
Both the questions and the answers that come to you in your head when you're doing that.
Yeah.
That I think is that cultivating that self-awareness, and I think also which is a theme of the book, is that for some other reason fate served this up to you. How come? Like in the book, I mentioned Hillman talking about Plato and Plato's Republic. The myth of which the idea being that before we're born, we have a chance to choose all of our circumstances, our parents, our children, our jobs, our loves, our hates, the good, the bad. It's all laid out like a big chessboard, or we've laid that out so it's like an obstacle course in my mind. We have to jump the hoops to get to what it is we set up for ourselves to learn.
Yeah.
And so when I do this with clients, I say, don't take this as the truth. Don't take it not as the truth. Just suspend animation, use imagination to pretend that it was. So you're stuck. You're in a big stinking mess. So what'd you do it for? Why did you put yourself in this really difficult place, where your ex-wife hates your guts, your kids can't stand you, your girlfriend just dumped you, and you just lost your job. So what'd you set that up for? Well, some people, I didn't set it up for myself. Well, it's like, just imagine that you did. What possibly what is it you're supposed to learn from this? So I think that's that recognition that fate, as we play with that idea, that fate is, we're not masters of our destiny, and we are often reactive to what life serves up. And if we can't accept that, then we're really turning an eye to what the beauty of what life really is.
To know that, home is nowhere but in the heart. And I think as adoptees, we look outward for that sense of home all the time. Yeah. And I think we always look to see that I'm going to find my birth family and that's home. And then I'm going to find my birth mother and then that's home. Mm-hmm. And that's going to put this piece together and that piece. And it won't. Yeah. And we need to be more honest about that. It won't, you finding your way back to your heart in whatever modality, in whatever therapy, in whatever it is that you can do to get you back to that space, because that's everything. That's going to change your relationship with people. That's going to change your attachment style. That's going to change how you show up in the world and your worth. And I have an adoption group that I started, and I named it In My Heart, I Am Home. Mm-hmm. And that has been my mantra. Of course, I'm going to say sound, right? But Somatic, thank you for what you do, because getting back into my body and breath and that expression of emotion, so important. I didn't know I was holding so much. But for adoptees, what you let in is so important. We have so much to release that, spending time in nature, spending time in sound and experiencing sound baths, finding ways to find the way back into your body, opening that container can be very scary, because the amount, it feels like almost like I describe it as like a knot of emotions that you have to unravel. And that can be really daunting and scary at first. But trust me, once you start letting that go and you start feeling the lightness, that heart space will start to open and shine. And, you're always going to fall down. You're always going to, find that. But whatever works for you, keep going to that, keep going back to that, because home is always here, and it's just a constant reminder. Yeah. It's not your parents. It's not your birth parents. It's not your boyfriend. It's not your girlfriend. It's here.
Yeah. So what would you like struggling adoptees to know?
That there is healing. I really believe that. I hear from a lot of people that being healed isn't possible.
Yes.
And I actually kind of agree with that statement. I do not think past tense healing is, when we say healed, I will never have arrived. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
I will be actively healing for the rest of my life. But I do believe that healing is possible. I do believe that we can find our identity within ourselves. I do believe that there are layers and layers of us that are worthy of becoming known. And we just have to be willing to explore them and be curious and be compassionate and loving of them and not exiling them, like those fragmented pieces that happened for me. I had to learn how to show them compassion and how to love up on them. And now I feel like that part of me, my internal family systems, as we talked about, those parts do really feel like they belong, and they're quieter now. Like they're not as loud and screaming because I've really been able to show them compassion.
I would like adoptees to know that it's not their fault, that if they're struggling with taking care of their body or understanding how to eat or how to move, that there are so many factors that have made it that way, and that the things that we do with food and with exercise help us survive and help us cope with difficult situations, sensations, and feelings. And it's wise. It's a wise survival skill, and it's brave to realize that maybe you need help and you need support. And luckily there are so many adoptees in our world who are here to help, support, and heal and get you where you want to go.
I want you to know that it gets better, and that there is help if you look for it. You know that there are those of us out there that are here to connect with you, to be lifelines. I want them to know that they can reach out to me at any time. I tell people, I think of me as a resource and a connection point. People email me all the time and they're like, hey, and then, we either have these long email conversations or we get on Zoom and they're like, can we connect, and I want adoptees to know that wherever you are, it's okay. And that if you're feeling really lost or really confused or like there isn't any hope, please reach out.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of us here in this community that are here to hold you.
What do you want adoptees that might be struggling with their relationships with either their birth mother or adoptive mother? What would you want them to know?
It starts with us first. It starts with us and the connection with ourselves. Because then if we really do that work, we realize that we came from somewhere. And if we really do that work, we're within ourselves doing this work, not outside, where all of this practical stuff happens and that was happening around us when we didn't remember. I would want adoptees to be looking at their own story from within themselves, because for me, that direct connection with my birth mother that way led me to her story. Her story from there, from we were together, we were one. And then the realization that we were both damaged by this.
Yeah.
Because then that's led me on to looking into her childhood. Like, it was in the war days. It was in this just considering what was going on then just connected me more to. And also the same with my adoptive mom. My adoptive mom didn't really know how to be emotional because she was never brought up that way.
Yeah.
And the reason she wanted lots of children around and she wanted to do good for so many children was because her dad, my granddad, used to lock her up under the stairs on her own when she was 4 or 5 years old, and she was petrified. She never wanted a child to go through that.
Yeah. Wow.
So as much as I was, angry and how could you adopt me, and all of this, it really does help to go within and look at ourselves first, primarily, and then our stories, our birth stories, all of them.
I think they need to know they're not alone. This is a really complex, nuanced way of being in the world and way of being family to people. And you're not alone. There are other people out there. And to know that there are resources. There's people, there's books, there's groups and organizations that can help you walk through this journey. I'm always so amazed at the people who say, I don't know anybody like me. And I'm like, well, let's help you find them. I try and connect with them.
Not alone. That thing I found out once I started, going to events and talking to people, been on a couple podcasts. When I went to Tucson, Aunt Diane told me to submit for the Independent Author Award. I never even knew about it. I submitted, worked out well. And there was another adoptee who's accepted, Emma Stevens. And so I got to know Emma, and Emma's amazing, and her books are amazing.
Yeah.
And just, and then at the Adoptee Authors, there were so many people, Tony and Jen and Paul, and all these people, and Angie, and there's so many great people. And just the more people you get to know, that it feels like you're alone, but you're not. And don't be afraid, because the things, like you were just saying about Anne, the things you're afraid to admit you think, other people are thinking them too.
What message would you convey to adoptive parents that might be thinking about, or potential adoptive parents that are considering adoption?
So, I think that what I say is this: is maternal separation is trauma. And when you commodify a child by using a tool like adoption to acquire them, which erases their identity and is essentially, it's an industry that is delivering a product to a market, you compound that trauma potentially. So, these are all, the trauma is real, the manifestations are potential, the outcomes are potential. But the potentials are high and terrible, and no one really seems to think about that. And part of the reason that you don't find large cohorts of unhappy adult adoptees is because they don't exist, right? They end their lives. If you look at the data for maternal separation trauma, adoptive people who go through maternal separation trauma contemplate suicide 4 times more than people who don't. There's different studies that say 6, there's some that say 2. But 4 is pretty consistent. And people don't really think about what that means. But if you look at statistics, like during the pandemic, 12% of kids between the ages of 14 and 24 contemplated suicide. But what that means is that in that same age range, the adoptees, sure, there's variances. It's not a 1-to-1, right? But that means 52% of those kids contemplated suicide. 52% of a population considering taking their life sounds just terrible to me. And if I'm wrong and it's only 35% of a population, right? It's still just horrible. And they're young, right? And the problem is that there's that age band where it happens, and it still keeps happening, right? But sure, then it does go down to 30% or whatever. But in the end, there's fewer adoptees to ask the questions to.
I want adoptees to know that no matter where you are in life, your mother has a hole in her heart because you're not there. There is not a single mother that does not have her child in her care that does not think about that child. Until you can prove me wrong, there's not a mom that hasn't thought about that child. So that adoptee needs to know, even because I was removed from my mother thought about me. My birthday always came across her heart on my birthday, because that day was so ingrained in her head. You were always loved. You were always thought about. No matter what your situation was that got you to the point that you were always thought about. There's not always a way out, but until your mother can come and care for you again, you need to think of yourself and take care of yourself. because nobody else is going to. So pick yourself up. It's going to be okay. You will find your mom. That primal instinct will always come. It's like two strings that always end up meeting in the middle. It's always there. Keep going because you will find her eventually.
What would you like struggling adoptees to know?
That you belong, that you're worthy, that you're loved, and you might not have people in your current vicinity that treat you that way, but there are a community of adoptees that do love you and will love you and will accept you and where you do belong. And I want them to know that they're not alone and they don't have to do this thing alone. And I also want them to know that wherever they're at in their adoptee journey, whether they have come out of the fog, and I say that in quotation marks, whether they, are totally comfortable and happy with their adoption experience, or whether they are raging mad about their adoption experience, that wherever you're at, that's okay. And it's all part of your journey. It's all part of your journey. Yeah. I really, and I say that because I had a really hard time when I started to meet other adoptees, and I would see some of them, hating their biological parents or hating their adoptive parents. And I thought, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Should I hate my adoptive parents? Should I be more angry about this?
Yeah.
And I really had to accept that, no, like everybody really is just on their own journey, and it's okay.
It's real what you're feeling. It's not made up. It's not your fault. It's in your DNA, and there's hope.
I think I can say it's worth it. Even with rejection, it's worth it. Yeah. And when you get to that place, when you're tired, when you really want answers, and you want to stop this facade of you and start the work of you, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Even though it's hard.
I would like them to know that there are a lot of people out there like them. I would like for them to join some of the support groups, because that's been extremely helpful. Yeah. Talk to people like you. If you're an adoptee that cannot find your family, read stories about people that did, because there's a lot of stories that people who went to great lengths to find their family and now wish they hadn't. You may not like what you find. And if you do find, if you are one and you have these options, find out what other people have done to find their families, and follow some of their examples and some of their leads.
What do you want your adoptive daughter to know?
That I'm more educated now than I was, or beginning with my research phase of our relationship. And in the beginning, I was not as prepared as I should have been, is my personal view. And that now I'm dedicated to helping others be more prepared so that they can make the most of all their years together, instead of having regrets later on.
So what would you like people to know about your experience? And it could be anything about your adoption experience, that you just want the average person to know that they might not know.
Well, I want people to know that adoptees do not have the same rights as anyone else, like we were talking about. There are things that we're just not allowed to do. And then if we do them, it's at great expense to us, like reaching out to family. Not everyone can do that. We have to go through the DNA hoops and things like that. So when we're saying that we're angry, that is righteous anger, because we don't have the same rights. And that anger is the absolute normal feeling for what we have.
So if you could say something to your daughter, what would you want her to know?
I love her. And she should be here with me.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to cry.
That's okay. What advice would you give adoptive parents?
I really think for everybody, it's just to do the research. It's not about, it is actually okay for people to want to have something and not ever get it. It's okay for you to want to have children, but never be able to have children. And I think some people just need to accept that you may not ever be a mom. You may not ever be a dad. You can be a really great aunt, uncle, support system for somebody else if you're not willing to put the needs of the child first. So if you want to adopt and you're doing that for the right reasons, you're actually doing that to provide a safe, healthy home for a child who would not have had that otherwise, I think that that's really great. But I also think that just because we want something, I'd love to be really skinny, but unless I have surgery or just stop eating or exercise, there's sacrifices I have to make to get that, And so, yeah, I think that's a big thing that I just think it's really, really important for us to remember and to know this child came from somewhere. And
I always say they shouldn't have a job. Your baby
Exactly.
shouldn't have a job as soon as they come into the family, They shouldn't be a Band-Aid. Yeah. In essence, what would you like struggling either foster parents or potential adoptive parents to know?
The main thing I would love everyone to know is just get informed. Again, if something doesn't feel right, if you need help, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out. It's okay to get educated. There is no right or wrong way of doing things. This is all part of life's lessons. We're going to mess up. We're not going to be perfect. I have made so many mistakes along this journey. But the thing that has really helped me is knowing that I have a support system. So to really ask for help and really look for your support system, look for people who are going to support you and have your back, and people who are going to call you out, and not people who are going to sugarcoat it and be like, oh, you're doing just fine. Have those friends who are going to say, hey, that was not okay, and be like, oh shit, you're right, that was not okay. And really find that, because children are teachers, biologically or not. Children are teachers. Children are mirrors. They are going to mirror everything, the things that we don't like to the things that we love. That's what they're going to do. And if we find ways to really look at that mirror and find the lessons, but we can't find those lessons alone. We need support. We need people. We need a village. I have never really understood the gravity of that term or that phrase of it takes a village to raise a child. No, it takes a whole freaking city. It takes more than it takes every single person to do their part to raise a child, because that is our next generation. So don't do it alone. Find support, find people, ask for help, because that's all we need to do. We don't need to figure these things out on our own.
Well, what advice would you give a birth mother that went through a similar thing? Maybe found out that their child had already passed or passed after they met them. What kind of support helped you? What helped you get through it?
I want them to know that once you start talking and writing about it, just in a journal, just write it. It's not something to hold within you. It's something to find someone to talk, a support group, a grieving group. I was fortunate to know women who are psychologists, because I truly believe the more we talk, the more we help each other. So many birth mothers I found too, even some that I knew at the home, still cannot talk about it. They cannot talk about being in that experience or giving up a child. You're ashamed of yourself, even when you are okay with the adoption. I've talked to so many of them. I know we do have issues that will never go away. A lot of my I guess you got to call it shame, still lives within me. So, you're probably right. You're probably right.
So in closing, what would you like struggling adoptive parents to know? Maybe that they're struggling with maybe the birth mother or just raising their adoptive child. What would you like them to know?
You guys are not alone. I think there's a lot of us, out there. And actually, when you were asking me at the beginning if I was part of a community, I was going to look around to see if there was, other parents like me, adoptive parents who have issue, with their birth mother, and see, what did you do, guys? What did you do? Did you talk to a mediator, moderator? Did you contact a lawyer? What's going on? Because sometimes I think that we need a break, and sometimes I think, it might even be better for her. Maybe she can talk to her when she can respond to her, when our child will be old enough to respond to her. Because right now it's kind of difficult. So, just know, you're not alone. There's a lot of us out there struggling a little bit, but it's all worth it. It's all worth it. I'm happy every day when I see her. I'm happy every day. So she's really part of our family.
What would you want struggling adoptive parents to know?
Well, I would definitely want them to know that there really is hope, and it's probably not more experts giving you another parenting strategy. I feel so confident that if you're struggling with behaviors, that working with a coach can really shift that around for you. But it can't just be any coach. I know I've heard I've heard parents talk about, well, the county gave me a coach, but it was just somebody giving me parenting strategies, not helping me to show up differently. So it does matter the kind of coach.
Yeah.
And I really feel strongly that it should be on somebody who understands what you're going through, because it isn't easy when your emotions are wrapped up in what you're trying to work through. It isn't easy. So I would, I hope that your listeners leave this conversation and all of your episodes, but leave feeling like there is hope. And it might take just doing things a little bit differently than you've done them before.
What advice do you have for those thinking about adoption? And what questions would you say they should be asking themselves before they adopt?
Number one advice, you have to be listening to adoptees. Like, by listening to this podcast, I think that you are taking a good first step by listening to adoptees and listening to like some of the core issues around adoption, because it's not something that you can just dismiss or just expect that won't happen to you, or expect that that's not going to be your experience, because it most likely will. And you also need to be centering their voices in all of this, because that's what actually matters. I mean, I think that there are so many amazing adoptees on Instagram or, on social media, or that have podcasts that are really sharing a lot of the hard topics that you need to be wrestling with before you're going through this, because it's kind of like the tough love that I would have to give to the adoptive parents that I worked with. You have to be ready to be a parent. This isn't something that you can just like hope that some of this stuff resolves later down the road, or like, hope that you find some friends that are part of your child's culture, or hope that you have to put in the work now, because it's not, when you become a parent, it gets a whole lot harder to make friends it gets a whole lot harder to read some of these books, gets a whole lot harder to go to therapy. And so it's like, do the work now and listen to those voices. And, you know, I think that's the most important thing.
What would you like struggling adoptees and others in the adoption triad to know?
I think what I would love people to take away from this is taking responsibility for your experience, and then playing with the idea of what is you being a liberator in your life look like. How does that add, like having that frequency of liberation, what does that feel and look like when you add that into your world?
What would you like struggling adoptive parents to know?
Oh, I think the number one thing I would like struggling adoptive parents to know is that you're doing a great job. And I say this because when I think of struggle, there's so many different ways that we struggle on this journey. And as we struggle, at least for me, in the back of my mind, I'm like, am I doing the right thing? But I'm not his birth mom. Is this okay? Am I doing all these things the right way and things like that? But I'm like, okay, this imposter syndrome needs to go away. And I need to realize that, hey, I'm doing a great job. We're doing a great job as parents. We're doing what we think is right. But at the same time, there are resources out there if we really need them. Like mentioned, you can go see a therapist. You can do family therapy, individual therapy for your child if needed, speaking to doctors. One of the things I really want to do for my son is get him genetically tested, just so we know, okay, here are all the things that could happen moving forward so that we can help and be on top of it if it comes up. It may not come up, but it's also going to be great for him when he gets older and has to go to doctor's appointments and fill out all this paperwork to be able to know, okay, yes, I have a family history of this, a family history of that. So the things I would say is, you are a great parent. You're doing the best thing you know how to do currently, but also try and tap into different resources that are out there to be able to help you in the areas that you are struggling with.
What do you want other adoptees that might be struggling with attempting to end their life, what do you want them to know?
Yeah. From my heart, like from somebody, a lot of people could say they get it, but they don't. And I get it. I need you to love you. I need you to love you in a way that when you wasn't loved, it doesn't define you. And when you aren't loved and when you aren't appreciated, it doesn't define you. And you aren't triggered. I need you to love yourself in a way that it doesn't matter who didn't love you, when they didn't love you. You gotta love yourself. Because you're not defined by who didn't love you, who gave you up, who didn't want you, who didn't see your light. You're only defined for the moments that you love you in them. Like it's got to be a you moment. I've had to understand this about me. It's got to be you. You got to love you. You got to love you. No warranty. We got this thing in California. We buy a car. As is, no warranty. That means you can't take that car back. You cannot take you back. You got to love you. All flaws, however you were created, whatever color you are, however your hair looks, whatever your body size is, you got to love you. You got to love you. Like, you got to start there, because as long as you don't love you, you will always be defined by somebody else's decision. And that decision doesn't define you. I've lived in it for years. I've lived in that shadow trying to understand why for years. She doesn't define me. He didn't define me. It didn't define me. I'm only defined by what I say. I'm building this life. I've made a lot of decisions because I was hurt. And I know you've made a lot of decisions because you've been hurt. You've been misunderstood. But today is your chance to get better, Today is your chance to accept who you are, and you can do it right now in this moment. And you don't need validation from anything or anybody, and I love you, and I mean that.
Thank you for joining us for this powerful episode of Mind Your Own Karma, the Adoption Chronicles. The voices you've heard today remind all of us of the shared humanity within the adoption journey and community. Proof that understanding and healing are possible, no matter where you are in the process. If today's stories resonated with you, please share this episode and continue the conversation. If anyone that you saw or heard today resonated with you personally, please don't hesitate to reach out to them. Many of them have written books, are counselors or coaches, or have courses to help adoptees in so many ways that I can't even list. Reach out to them and see what they have to offer. Until next time, remember, your story matters. Your voice matters, and together we are rewriting what it means to belong. In closing, as always, take what you need and leave what you don't. And always remember to mind your own karma. I'll see you next time.
This podcast is created for educational purposes by the telling of adoption experiences. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or Mind Your Own Karma.